Haven't been here in a while. Good to be here with you folks. And we are, like Leanne said, concluding our series, Shine. And throughout this series for the past 4 weeks or so, we've been looking at how God calls us to be a light in the world around us. And how many of us recognize that the world around us is getting pretty dark? What I want to encourage you is the darker the world gets, the brighter our light has an opportunity to shine. And so for the past 4 weeks or so, we've been looking at the story of Daniel. And if you're new to church here, the book of Daniel is in the Old Testament, and it was written during a time when the people of God got overthrown or got taken over by the Babylonian Empire. And during this transition, they basically took all the remaining survivors that survived the war, and they took them from their current homeland, and they moved them to a new land. And so in this process, they were basically foreigners in the land. And 4 of the individuals that got taken were Daniel, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And these 4 individuals were chosen to be in Babylonian leadership. And so in this process, or over 3 years, they got indoctrinated with everything Babylonian. And throughout this time, we see this story that how even though they were in a foreign land, how they were still being able to shine their light in a dark world around them. And so we've been looking at the story of Daniel, and tonight we're going to be in Daniel chapter 6. Daniel chapter 6, and Daniel, the person who wrote this book and is the main character in the book, he served under 4 different kings, under 3 different nations. And he was serving basically pagan leaders in a way that still glorified God. And at this point in Daniel chapter 6, Daniel, who was a teenager when the story began, is now about 80 years old. And he's serving under his 3rd king. And this book in Daniel chapter 6 is actually famous for the story of Daniel and the lion's den. How many of us are familiar with the lion's den? Well, the lion's den comes from this story here that we're going to be looking at this evening. That's why I titled my message this. So what then? So what then? If you're Moke, you know exactly what we're talking about here. And to get this message started, how many of us are familiar with, what is this, LaCroix? LaCroix? You guys familiar with this? Somebody turned me on to this recently, and I've been enjoying it. It's carbonated water, if you don't know. And I like Sprite, and this is like the best thing that's healthier compared to Sprite. I just like the carbonation. And I have 2 cans here. And I'm going to do this. I'm going to show this as an illustration for us this evening. I'm going to squeeze both cans that are exactly the same with all my might. I'm going to see what happens, okay? So how many of us think that I'm strong? All right, never mind. And so here's what we're going to do. So I'm squeezing, right? I'm applying the same amount of pressure, but one is crushing. I'm being crushed. And another one is not even budging at all. Why is that? Why is that? One is full, one was empty. And this is what I want to get into your mind, is that it's the same can. It's the same design on the can, same thing on the outside, but the only difference is really what's on the inside. And I want to encourage you tonight is that when we have God on the inside of us, it doesn't matter the pressure that we experience around us, because greater is He that is in us than the pressure from the world. And so throughout this message tonight, I want to get this into your head, is that it's not about what's on the outside that matters, but if we're filled with Christ on the inside of us, it doesn't matter what kind of pressure that you're facing, because pressure is always going to be around us in life. And the only difference from people who make it through the pressures of life than other people is really who we have on the inside of us. That's why it's so essential for us, not just to know God in our mind, but to be filled with Him in our heart. We don't want to just come and play church and just do this religious thing. No, that's not going to change your life. But when we have Jesus genuinely on the inside of us, it doesn't matter the pressure that we face in the world around us, because He allows us to endure the pressures of life. And Daniel was living during a time where he was facing a lot of pressures. How many of us, you're right now, in your life, you're feeling like you're facing a lot of pressure? And all of us at some point in our life are going to have to face some difficult pressures. And that's why it's so essential for us. It's not to be absorbed with the pressure, but we need to be consumed with who's on the inside of us, because He allows us to endure whatever the pressure around us is. And Daniel, in this story, in Daniel chapter 6, he was going through a difficult time, experiencing a lot of different pressures. And in Daniel chapter 6, we're going to pull out 4 principles that we can apply to our lives that would help us to really endure the pressures of the world around us. In your notes and up on screen, first point is this: being excellent opens opportunities for influence. Being excellent opens opportunities for influence. And so Daniel right now in Daniel chapter 6 is serving under his third king, Darius. And the king began to do some restructuring in leadership. And this is where we pick up the story in Daniel chapter 6, verse 1. It says this: Darius, the king at the time, decided to divide the kingdom into 120 provinces, and he appointed a high office ruler to rule over each province. Verse 2, the king also chose Daniel, so Daniel was chosen, and 2 other administrators to supervise the high officers and protect the king's interests. So Daniel was selected amongst a lot of different people for a pretty important task in regards to the leadership of this nation. And his job was basically to look after the king. Verse 3, Daniel soon what? Proved himself more capable than all the other administrators and high officers. Because of Daniel's great ability, the king made plans to place him over the entire empire. So Daniel was serving and living in such a way that the king trusted him to oversee the entire nation. And so there's something about how Daniel lived that was attracted to this new king. Now, he's serving a new king. It's foreign people, but the way that Daniel was living, the character that he had, the excellence in which he lived his life was so attractive to this leader that he was like, man, I got to put you over everything. And it was this attitude of excellence that opened the door for influence in his life. How many of us know that people are always watching what we do? People are always watching what we do. And I want to encourage you with this, is that oftentimes when we come into a relationship with God, we understand that there's nothing we can do to earn God's favor. There's nothing that we can do to earn his love. God loves us based on who he is, not based on our performance. And so we don't earn God's love by our performance, but we got to earn people's love through our performance. The world doesn't operate under the same rules in which God operates under. And so for people, the people who have no relationship with God, the only thing that they can see is our performance. They don't see the Jesus on the inside of us. They only see how we live our lives on the outside, and that can determine whether or not we have a relationship with God. They can just look at us by how we live to see if this person is a genuine Christ follower or not. And so Daniel wasn't trying to prove himself to prove himself to God, but he understood that he needed to prove himself to people. And in the world that we're living in, we live in a society where we kind of got to prove ourselves. We're not trying to prove ourselves to earn God's love, but in order for us to have opportunities of influence, we have to earn that. Nothing's freely given to us. And so in our mind, we have to make a distinction between our relationship with God and the relationship with the world around us. And people don't care what we do as long as we're doing it excellent. People don't care who we serve as long as we're doing it with an attitude of excellent. And if we're going to shine before people and let God, who's in our life, shine to others, the only way that we can do that is by being excellent in all that we do. Being excellent in all that we do. The only way the world is going to listen to our message if we live a life that actually allows them or gives them reason to listen to us. And so for most people, the only Jesus that they're going to see is the person that claims to have a relationship with Jesus. And you know what the knock on Christianity is this? People don't have an issue with Jesus. People have a lot of issues with people who claim to know Jesus and don't live that way. And so I'm not trying to beat us up here tonight, but I want to give us a mindset and an idea of how the world sees us. And then a lot of people who have great influence and opportunities is because they've been doing it excellent. And that's why the Bible says here in Matthew 5:16, in the same way, let your light shine before others so that they may see your good deeds. The world wants to see deeds. The world has heard a lot of messages. They don't want to hear another message. They want to see a message lived out practically. They want to see some good deeds in our life. So my question to us tonight is this: what kind of good deed is coming out of your life? What kind of good things are happening in your life that is really reflecting God in a way that honors God? You know, worship isn't just singing songs on Sunday. Worship is living a life on Monday that reflects God. It's real worship. I don't want us to just come here on Sunday, sing, oh, what a beautiful name, and then not really exalting that name on Monday because of how we live our life. Because worship isn't just a Sunday thing. Worship is the lifestyle that we live on a daily basis. And when we realize that we're living for God, we can be excellent in all that we do. Why do we need to be excellent? Because God is excellent. And if God is really in our life, we reflect him by being excellent in all that we do. And so here's some practical things. It's not in your notes. You can write this down on how we can be excellent at our workplaces and in any environment that you're in where work is needed. And I want this to break down because I don't want you to think like, oh, the people who have more opportunities have greater skill set. No, these things I'm going to talk about here are basically practical for any of us to do. And if we do these practical things, influence is going to come in your life. So a few practical things. First thing is this. Be on time. Super practical. If you work a job, show up on time. Come on, somebody. You got to preach that. Be on time. You know, a lot of times we're just like, some of us, we're struggling to get to work on time. We're rolling in 15 minutes late, and we look like we just woke up. You know what I'm saying? That's probably because we just did wake up. And you know what that communicates? That you're not ready to work. Nobody's going to take you serious if you show up late consistently. People who show up on time communicates, man, I'm here to work. I'm ready to work. And this is like, I mean, you're not going to find a Bible verse that thou shalt show up on time. But no, it's just kind of like respecting other people. And when we show up on time, we're basically saying, I'm respecting the time that I'm going to give you. I'm going to give my best. And a lot of people, you show up late and, how come I have more opportunities and stuff? It's because the basic fundamentals of showing up on time communicates that you're not serious about what you're doing. And people are not going to listen to you if you're constantly showing up late and you look like you just woke up. You know what I mean? Here's another one. Comb your hair before you go to work, too. You know what I mean? Like, that's just practical. Like, look like you're ready to work. Because people, I mean, that's what it says. The Bible says this. Man looks at the outside, but God sees the heart. Man can only see the outside. They're not seeing the heart of Jesus in you. So we gotta reflect on the outside what man can see. And so you're looking all hash. That's not going to give glory to God. Come on, somebody. Brush your teeth, comb your hair, do some things, that glorifies God. And it's not about image. We're not trying to earn ourselves for God, but we're trying to reflect God to the people around us. And what they're going to see, basically how we look. That's what the world sees. And so some of us can take that to an extreme, but just be mindful. Showing up on time and being ready to work is a practical thing that we can do to be excellent. Second thing is this, be enjoyable. Some of you are just complaining every second at work. I got to do that. Nobody wants to be around a complainer, okay? And if you find yourself complaining at work, you know what's going to communicate to people? I don't want to work with that guy. This is just irritating. You know what I mean? How many of us, you've worked around somebody who constantly complains, who looks like they're mad all the time? You know what I mean? You mad? What's wrong? Oh, he's a stink face. Get the indentions in the forehead already. Like a practical thing, really super practical. Just be a person that, when you show up to work, like, enjoy what you're doing. And if you're not enjoying what you're doing, find another job. Don't allow other people to have to endure you because you don't like your job there. You know what I mean? So if that's not the place for you to really honor God there, then find another job. But be enjoyable. Be somebody that other people want to be around. How are they going to hear the message of God if they're just afraid of your stink attitude? Let's just be real. Can we gonna be real tonight? I mean, that's my whole message. I want to leave us with practical things that would allow us to see how our light really can shine for Jesus or not. And it's in these practical things. Like if you're not a person that people want to be around, then they're never going to hear the gospel message through your life. Christians should be the most friendliest people. That you can make friends with anyone, not just Christians. But if we're friendly and we're enjoyable, people are going to want to be around you. And the more people want to be around you, the more opportunities you're going to have to shine your light for Jesus. Shine your light for Jesus. So be enjoyable. Third thing is this, be dependable. Like if they tell you to do something, follow through with that. Like don't be the kind of person that they say, oh yeah, I got it. You overpromise and underdeliver. That's the worst person. You know what I mean? Like say, yeah, I got him, give it to me. And then they give you the responsibility. And when the deadline comes, oh, did you finish it? Oh, no, sorry. See what happened was, and we're coming up with all these excuses. Being dependable is basically this, following through with what was given to you. If you want to have influence for people around you in the workplace, be a person that can be dependable, meaning if they give you a responsibility, follow through and execute it to the best of your ability. We're not talking about perfection, but we're just talking about execution. So if something was given to you, make sure that you do it and doing it to the best of your ability. You're not doing it for your boss. You're doing it for God. So you put your best into it Because at the end of the day, that's your practical way of worshiping God, by serving other people. So be dependable. Make sure you finish what was given to you. And lastly is this, be flexible. Be flexible. Sometimes you're going to have to stay a little late at work. And if you're the person who constantly complains about that, again? That's not a person that bosses are going to want to give more opportunities to. Sometimes just be flexible. And being flexible is this too. Sometimes you're going to have to do responsibilities that are outside of your job description. And just do it. All right, hey, whatever needs to get done. If we have a willing heart to serve, whatever it takes to get done, doing it with the best attitude and to say, hey, I can do that. And when we have these 4 simple qualities, let me tell you, influence is going to come. Because these 4 things are just a reflection of excellence in our life. And when we have these qualities growing, increasing measure in our life, let me tell you, there's no opportunities that's not going to come your way that God's not going to send to you, because he can say, man, that person can be trusted. And it's in the little things that God looks for us to be trusted in. And so 4 things, man, just show up on time, be enjoyable, be dependable, be flexible. And Daniel was probably thinking these simple things, and even more so because he was able to serve 4 different kings. And so he was living at such a way that 4 different people was like, man, I need that guy on my team. And if we really want to be a church that makes a difference in the world around us, we got to live our lives in such a way and being excellent that people in the world and the marketplace is like, man, I need that person on my team. What's so different about you? It's not about what we're doing. It's about that God is in our life. He's using us to make the difference in a practical way. So the way that we reflect Him best is by being excellent in all that we do. And when we can do that, if you're working at Jamba Juice right now, make the best smoothies ever and do it with a smile. You ever been to I went to this one spot, okay? I go to Starbucks all the time. And there's, I go to Coffee Bean and Starbucks for meetings. And Starbucks, they don't really know me. Because I just don't really, Starbucks is okay, but Coffee Bean Pro City, a lot of people come to our church here, and they treat me like royalty. I like going there. And every time they give me my drink, they just give it with a smile. And that just makes an impact in my life. I mean, it makes you feel better about yourself. And let me tell you, when we do things with a smile for people, they're just like, man, I just like that person. And we want to be a church and a people that people just genuinely like. And we're not trying to perform for them, but we want to let them know who God is in our life. And the practical ways that we can do that is just by smiling and having a great attitude. Man, a lot of times, if you want to start preaching a message to the world, man, just do it with a smile. And being a person that people want to be around, and opportunities are going to come your way. And here's the truth. Integrity and influence go hand in hand. You can do all these things on the outside, but if we don't have integrity in our hearts, there's not going to have opportunities for influence. The more influence you want, the more integrity you're going to have in your life. And in the marketplace and in living in the world around us, sometimes, man, integrity is a rare thing today. And we as a church, if we're serving a faithful God, we need to be faithful and integrous in everything that we do. This is a movie that came out a long time ago called Courageous. It's a Christian movie. And can I be honest, I typically don't like Christian movies because it's so cliche. But there's this one scene in this movie about a guy who was given a task to be a little bit sneaky in his life, and he had a decision to make. Take a look at the screen and see how he responded. Last on the list. You can give God praise for that. Last on the list. But first chosen. Because when we honor God in the little things, let me tell you, God honors you and before man. And so God wants us to be a people that can be trusted. And if we can be trusted in little, God will give us opportunities to really further His kingdom. Second point in your notes is this. Opportunities from God invites opposition from others. Opportunities from God invites opposition from others. In verse 4 of Daniel chapter 6, it says this, then the other administrators and high officers began searching for some fault in the way Daniel was handling government affairs because they couldn't find anything to criticize or condemn. So Daniel was doing such a good job in being excellent in everything that he had some haters. Can we just say that? He had haters. And people weren't all excited about the opportunities that were coming his way. And so what they started to do was look for ways within his life to try and put him on blast. And the thing about Daniel is that they were jealous of him, so they tried to find a way to criticize or condemn him. But he was faithful, he was always responsible and completely trustworthy. So they concluded the only chance of finding grounds for accusing Daniel will be in connection with the rules of his religion. And so here's the thing, what they're saying is this, is that Daniel was so excellent, was so a man full of faithfulness and integrity that they had to make up a law to get him. And the way that they got him was like they made up this law that said this, man, the only way we can get that guy is if we have to create a law that says if you pray, then you're going to get busted. And so Daniel had some haters. And you know when God starts opening opportunities for you, not everyone around you is going to be excited about that. Can we just be real? A lot of times in faith, we think, man, everyone's going to share in our excitement. Everyone's going to be happy for us. But every opportunity that comes our way from God is going to also invite some opposition from other people. And Daniel had some haters, man. Let me tell you this. Not everyone's going to be happy for you when you start losing weight. Can we just be real? You know, you're making an issue. Man, I'm going to lose some weight. And then you're doing it, starting to exercise, eating right. And, you know, the people that you're around that you thought were going to encourage you, and they're, like, not so happy for you. And you're like, man, what did I do anything wrong? Or you get into a new relationship, and you're so excited. And the people that, you know, who are single and your friends are like, oh, like hating on you for the relationship that you have. You know what I mean? Or you get a new opportunity, a job comes your way, and God's starting to open up opportunities, and you're starting to experience the opportunities, and you're excited, but you realize that a lot of people around you don't share in that excitement. I want to encourage you tonight is that oftentimes what people are mad at you about is really something that they want in their life. You know, because sometimes some people keep people around them to help them feel better about themselves. And as long as you're down and staying stuck, then that's kind of like a safety blanket that helps them reassure themselves that they're not so bad. But once God starts to open up opportunities for you in your life because of your obedience, and you're starting to experience the favor of God, they're not so happy anymore. And here's the thing, they're not mad at you about what you're doing, they're mad at themselves, and they're projecting that anger onto you because really in reality, they want what you have in your life, and they don't know how to express it, but just to start hating on you. So that's why we need to be careful about the people who we keep close to us, because some people just want you to be down, so that makes them feel better about themselves. So we have to surround ourselves with some right people, some good people that are excited for you, that are encouraged about what God is doing in your life. And even though they don't have the blessing of God yet, they can celebrate with you and your blessing. Can we be a people that celebrates the blessings of God on other people's lives, even though you've been praying for the same thing for years and haven't experienced that yet? Can we celebrate the happiness of God working through other people and be joyful with them for what God is doing in their lives? That's the kind of church that God wants us to be. And so we have to have this reality and mindset that not everyone is going to be happy for you when God starts to bring opportunities your way. So God started to open up opportunities for Daniel, and then people around them were looking for ways to get him to try and find some skeleton in his closet, some scandal to put him on blast, but they couldn't find anything, so they had to make up something. Man, what if we could be a church that way, that whenever people look at us, they try to look into everything that we do. We live a life in such integrity and faithfulness to God that they don't have anything that they can get mad at us about. The only thing that can put us on blast is about our relationship with God. And that's exactly what they did. And so they buttered up the king. They said this, King, for the next 30 days, we're going to create this. We are so awesome. You're so amazing that we want you to put this law into effect that if anyone starts to pray within the next 30 days, they're going to get thrown into the lion's den. They're going to get thrown into the lion's den. And a lot of people, for us, I can understand this. I can understand going through storms because of something like a mistake that I made in our life. And how many of us have ever been there before? You made a mistake, you did something that you shouldn't have done, and a storm came your way, and you're like, man, that's my fault. Like, I can get through a storm and understand that because, man, that's my bad. I did that. I got myself into this mess. And the great thing about God is even if you get yourself into a mess because of a decision that you make, that God can still turn it for good. I don't understand doing the right thing and going through a storm for the right thing. And how many of us know that sometimes you can be doing the right thing and that just invites a storm into your life? Like you're in a relationship and that person is trying to do a little bit more, get a little bit more physical, and you realize, man, this is not a relationship that honors God, and so you break up with that person and you find yourself in a storm. I remember talking to a mom, and she was talking about her rebellious and disrespectful son who graduated high school, was living in a house, but as a college student was just being mean, disrespectful, getting caught up in drugs. And then she was praying and asking God to do something, and God told her, kick him out of the house. Like the most loving thing that she could have done was kick him out of the house. And then she found herself going through a storm because that's exactly what she did, kicked the son out of the house, and how she was filled with condemnation because she was wrestling. Man, I feel like I'm not loving my son in the way. And I just had to reinforce God's favor on her life by saying this. No, what you're doing is right. And the storm that you're going through right now is because you're doing the right thing. And some of us here tonight, the storm that you're in right now is not because you did anything wrong. It's because you chose to do the right thing, and God is working through your life, but there's a real enemy that's trying to kill, steal, and destroy. And so he's sending a storm your way to bring you down. But let me tell you, sometimes the storms that we experience in our life is a sign that we're doing the right thing. Keep on going. Keep on going. Because sometimes doing the right thing invites a storm into our life. And that's what Daniel was doing. The storm that he was going through is because he was doing the right thing. He was just being faithful to God. And a storm came his way. Third thing in your notice this. Not only do we need to be excellent, not only do we have to understand that opportunities from God invites oppositions from others, but kneeling in prayer gives us strength to stand. Kneeling in prayer gives us strength to stand. So they make this law into effect. The king says, anyone who prays to a god other than the king is going to get thrown into the lion's den. And this is exactly where we pick up the story. In verse 6, it says this. But when Daniel learned that that law about if anyone prays, going to get thrown into the lion's den, had been signed, this is what he did. He went home and knelt down, as usual, in his upstairs room with its windows open towards Jerusalem. He prayed 3 times a day. Just as he's what? Just as he has always done, giving thanks to God. Great thing about Daniel is this. He didn't start praying when the storm came. He was already praying before the storm came. He established a lifestyle of just prayer and connection to God. And I was reading this, I was like, man, he did 3 times a day. How many of us would think, man, 3 times a day, that's a lot of prayer? Can you just be honest? Like, man, that's a lot of prayer. And I started to think about this, like, why 3 times a day? And then I started to realize this is that Daniel understood that in order for him to stand for God in a country and a place that was anti-God, the only way that he's going to endure the pressure of the world around him is he needed to have a relationship with God where he was constantly filled. Constantly filled like this can. He needed to be constantly filled so when the pressure came, he wasn't going to cave in because he had a God that was greater on the inside than the pressure of the world around him. And so it wasn't about him praying a lot. He just had a desperation for God, to wanting to live for God in a dark place that he's like, man, the only way I can get through this is by being so connected with God that when the compromise comes, I'm not going to cave into compromise because greater is he that's in me because of my relationship with him by spending time with him that I'm able to endure the opposition for the people around us. And so Daniel just understood something that I'm not going to wait for the storms to come. Man, I'm going to be so connected to God that when the storms come, I'm just going to do what I've always done. Connect with God. Pray with God, be intimate with God. And Daniel was in such a dark place that he knew the only way that he was going to endure is by staying close to God. I realized this for myself that the days where I have quality time with God seem to go better. How many of us would find that to be true in your life? Like the days that you wake up, you get connected to God, you pray, you're in your word, and you just have a better attitude towards the day, and the day seems to go a little bit better. And I started to think about that. The days when I don't do that, it doesn't go so well. And it's not about just a religious thing, but you know what happens when we connect with God? We're better prepared for the day ahead because God gives us exactly what we need to face what exactly is coming our way. You see, we serve a God who knows exactly what we're going to go through that day, and when we spend time connecting with him, you know what happens? He gives us the strength and the grace to face whatever's coming our way. The days when we're not connecting with God and we find ourselves being super edgy is because we haven't tapped into the strength that God has given us that day. His mercies are new every morning. So there's a fresh batch of mercy that God wants to give to us to face whatever is coming for us that day. And so it's not a religious thing like, oh, if I spend time with God, I'm going to have great days. No, we're just better prepared for the day that is ahead of us because we've been connected to the source. And for us, in order for us to really make a difference in the world around us, we have to understand that the culture that we live in just wants to beat us up. The pressures around us to compromise, to sin is a lot. And we realize, and when we understand that, we have to realize that the only way that we're going to get through that is by being connected to the source of our strength. And that is Jesus Christ himself. And so prayer is not just this religious thing that we do to get more of God to work into our life, but prayer is just an opportunity for us to connect and tap into the strength that he's given to us every day And when we tap into his strength, he gives us the ability and empowers us to face whatever life has for us that day. So Daniel was just modeling for us that in order for us to really shine our light in the world around us, we need to get connected to the source. Some of us here tonight, you found yourself, man, just being crushed by the pressures around us because you're not filled with Jesus. We got to be so filled with Christ that when the pressure comes, we're going to be able to endure. It's not because of what we're doing. It's because of who we're knowing, who we're growing with that allows us to get through that kind of pressure. And so when life gets hard and you feel like you can't stand, the best posture is to kneel. And you feel like you're getting beat up with life and you feel like, man, I can't even stand, you're in the perfect position to just kneel and connect with God. Connect with him in prayer. Because as we kneel in prayer, God will give you the grace and the strength that would help you to stand, to shine, to be all that he's called you to be. But understanding that we can't do it on our own strength, we need to tap into his strength. Last point in your notes as the worship team comes up. Remain obedient and trust God for the outcome. We need to remain obedient and trust God for the outcome. Daniel 6:21-23 says this. Daniel answered and said, "Long live the king." So he got thrown into the lion's den. King threw him in there. And this is where we pick up the story. Long live the king. My God sent his angel to shut the lion's mouth so that they would not hurt me. For I have been found innocent in his sight. I have not wronged you, your majesty. The king was overjoyed and ordered that Daniel be lifted from the den, and not a scratch was found on him, for he had what? Trusted in his God. And I want to encourage you tonight. Sometimes we get caught up with just God trying to, rescue us from the lion's den. But before we get to this point in the story, there were 153 verses in the book of Daniel that basically are cataloging Daniel's life before the den. And when actually Daniel was in the den, there's 0 verses that describe his experience in the den. And here's the reason why. Because the whole point of the story wasn't about God rescuing Daniel from the den. The whole point of the story was Daniel's life of faithfulness before he got into the den. And that the reason why he got thrown into the den is because he was so faithful, living for God, that the outcome of doing that was being thrown into the den. And see, here's the truth about Daniel. He understood this, is that he couldn't shut the mouth of the lion. That wasn't his responsibility. That was God's responsibility. He was just faithful every step of the way before that. And so the whole point of the story is not God rescuing you from your lion's den. The whole point of the story is us living a faithful life before we get into the den. Living in such a way that we have to honor God every step of the way. And most people will never experience the opportunity to prove God's faithfulness because we don't do it in the simple things. We don't do it in the little things in our life. We haven't proven our faith in everyday life. So the goal is not for us to be like Daniel in the lion's den. No, the goal for us is to be like Daniel, who prayed every day and had integrity. Be like Daniel and serve God continually in every aspect of your life. Have the courage and faith to live in such a way that God gives you a platform to show his faithfulness to the people around us. And when we do our part to be faithful, God is going to do his part to be faithful in our life. He's going to close the mouth of the lion. When we trust God, it's not that nothing's going to happen to us that's bad, but we're going to come out of it okay. Not a scratch was on Daniel. And so it's not about what we're going through. It's about who we're connected with while we're going through what we're going through. The thing I love about God is this, that we live in a world where everyone goes through stuff. The only reason why we come out a little bit better is not because we're better. It's because we're attached to someone that's better, and that's God. And so if we were just a church that was excluded from any difficulties in life, we wouldn't have any opportunity to connect with other people. Because a lot of people in the world around us, man, they go through some stuff. And it's not that we're better than other people, because we're going to go through some stuff too. The only way that gets us out of the stuff that we're going through without harm is not because we're better, but we're attached to God in our life, and he gets us through these situations in our lives. So the whole point of the story is not, I'm thankful for God for shutting the mouths of the lions. But the whole point of the story is, man, I just want to be connected to God, that he's the source in everything that I do. When the lion's den comes, you know what? I'm going to be okay because I know God is going to get me through this, and my attitude is going to be this. So what then? So what storm? So what opposition? Because it doesn't matter what comes my way. It's just a matter about me staying connected to him in every aspect of my life. And when we trust that God can get us through everything, we know that He's our source for us to really shine in the world around us.